As Obinna's 30th birthday loomed closer, he and Adaora felt the council's presence everywhere. The guards seemed to watch them with a new intensity, as if they sensed the forbidden knowledge the two now carried. Despite the danger, Obinna's resolve grew stronger each day. He knew that without action, he would be just another name lost to the Valley of the Forgotten. The council's chambers stood at the city's center, an imposing fortress built of dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Deep within these chambers was the sanctum where the Stone of Ages was hidden, the artifact that sustained Oju's cursed prosperity. Destroying it was their only chance to free Oju from the pact with the gods and end the brutal exile of those over 30. As the days dwindled, Obinna and Adaora shared fleeting moments of peace, knowing that soon they would face the greatest trial of their lives, but with a shared understanding, even if they failed, they would die as defiant symbols of hope, their names never to be forgotten. To get close to the stone, they would need a way into the heart of the council. Over the past few days, Adaora had gathered intelligence on the council's routines and secured the trust of a few sympathetic guards. One of them, a young recruit named Kalechi, agreed to help them after Adaora convinced him of the council's dark secrets. Kalechi, only 24, had watched his own parents disappear when they turned 30, never questioning the rule until now. "It's madness," Kalechi whispered during their secret meeting one evening. "All my life, I thought they were just going somewhere else. I can't believe the council would do this." "They've fooled us all," Adaora said, her voice calm but fierce. "But we can end it, Kalechi. We just need a way inside the sanctum." Kalechi glanced around, his face tense. "There's an entrance that only council members use. It's hidden within the eastern wall behind the tapestries in the main hall. I can create a diversion for you and Obinna to slip in." Adaora nodded, her heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. I clasped Kalechi's shoulder. "Thank you, Kalechi. We'll make this right, I promise." With their plan in place, they set the date for the night before Obinna's 30th birthday. As the hours ticked away, Obinna's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. This was his final chance to make a difference, to uncover the truth and break the curse before he was exiled forever. That night, the city was quiet as Obinna and Adaora made their way to the council's chambers under the cover of darkness. The air was thick with tension, the streets empty except for a few guards patrolling in the distance. Kalechi was waiting for them near the council's main entrance, his face set with grim determination. "This way," he whispered, leading them inside. The grand hall was dimly lit by torches along the walls, casting flickering shadows that danced across the tapestries and marble columns. As they moved closer to the hidden door, Kalechi nodded, slipping away to create the diversion. Moments later, a loud crash echoed through the chambers, followed by shouts and hurried footsteps. The guards abandoned their posts, rushing toward the commotion. Obinna and Adaora took the chance, slipping behind the tapestries and finding the concealed door Kalechi had described. It was unlocked, opening to a dark, narrow passage that descended deep into the earth. They exchanged a final glance, then stepped into the unknown, knowing there was no turning back. The air grew colder as they moved down the winding staircase, the walls lined with ancient carvings that told stories of Oshu's founding and its pact with the gods. At last, they reached the bottom, where a heavy door stood, marked with the same symbols that adorned the Stone of Ages. Obinna took a deep breath, pushing the door open. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single torch, casting an eerie glow over the Stone of Ages, which sat on an altar in the center. The stone was dark, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift in the flickering light, as if alive. Adaora stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the stone. "This is it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and trepidation, "the heart of Oju's curse." Obinna reached out, feeling a strange pull from the stone. It was as if it called to him, a dark, magnetic force that whispered promises of power and prosperity. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. This stone was a prison for his people, not a blessing. "We need to destroy it," he said, his voice resolute. "Now, before the guards return." But as Adaora raised a hammer she had brought, a voice echoed from the doorway, cold and menacing. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." They turned to see Chief A, the leader of the council, standing in the doorway, flanked by guards in their masked helmets. Azi's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Eze continued, stepping into the room. "This stone is Oju's life. Destroy it, and you'll condemn our city to ruin." A tense silence fell over the room, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Obinna clenched his fists. "You've been condemning us to ruin for years, Chief Eze. You send our people to die for the sake of this cursed pact. Oju's prosperity isn't worth the lives it's built on." Eze shook his head slowly. "You're young, Obinna. You don't see the bigger picture. This pact has ensured that Oju remains powerful, respected, prosperous. Our people live lives of luxury, and we are protected from the wars and plagues that ravage other villages." "At what cost?" Adaora spat. "This isn't life. It's a lie. The people deserve the truth, even if it means losing this power." Eze's expression hardened. "You're naive. Do you really think the people want the truth? They want comfort, wealth, security, things this city has provided for generations. This is the sacrifice they must pay, a sacrifice they've paid willingly." Obinna took a step forward, his voice rising. "They haven't paid it willingly. They've paid it in ignorance. But that ends tonight." Eze's gaze darkened, and with a nod, the guards advanced on Obinna and Adaora. "I had hoped you two would see reason, but I can't allow you to jeopardize Oju's future." Obinna braced himself as the guards closed in, but Adaora lunged forward, swinging her hammer at the Stone of Ages. Her blow connected with a loud crack, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across its surface. The stone pulsed with a dark light, and the room filled with an intense, vibrating hum that made the walls tremble. Eze's face twisted in horror. "No. Do you know what you've done?" Obinna grabbed the hammer from Adaora and struck the stone again, shattering it further. A surge of energy burst forth, sending waves of light and darkness spiraling through the room. The guards staggered back, disoriented, as the very foundation of the building shook. Obinna felt a surge of energy rush through him, a force unlike anything he had ever felt. The stone's power was unraveling, releasing centuries of bound magic that had been sealed within it. He could see images flashing before him, the faces of the exiled, the spirits of those who had perished in the valley, crying out in release. The room was collapsing, and Azi's voice rang out in despair. "You fools! You've doomed us all!" But Obinna and Adaora felt no regret. They turned and fled up the staircase as the building began to crumble, the stone's curse releasing its hold on Oju. They burst out into the open air, where a gathering crowd stared at the council chambers, which were now shaking and shuddering, stones cracking and dust billowing into the sky. The once grand chambers collapsed in a thunderous roar, and a strange silence fell over the city. Obinna and Adaora looked around, seeing confusion and fear in the eyes of the townspeople. The illusion had shattered, the curse broken. Oju was no longer the city it once was. For the first time, the people of Oju saw their city for what it truly was, an ordinary place no longer held together by the dark magic of the stone. The prosperity, the agelessness, it was gone. But so was the curse that had demanded their lives. Obinna felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He knew that Oju would never be the same, that the people would have to rebuild and find a new way forward, but they would do so freely, without the burden of an ancient, deadly secret. As the sun rose, casting light over the crumbled remnants of the council's chambers, Obinna and Adaora knew their journey had come to an end. They had freed Oju from its curse, giving the city a chance to begin anew. This time with truth and freedom as its foundation. And for the first time in generations, Oju had hope. A new dawn for Oju. The morning after the council's chambers collapsed, a hush blanketed Oju. The city's once grand plaza was filled with rubble, the remains of the council's stronghold, and a crowd gathered in stunned silence, watching the dust settle. Obinna and Adaora stood at the edge of the square, their bodies weary but their spirits alight with a hard-won sense of purpose. For the first time in Oju's history, the entire population had gathered, not by decree, but by shared shock and the need to understand what had happened. Whispers moved through the crowd, weaving together fragments of truth and rumor. People were asking questions that, just a day before, they wouldn't have dared to voice. Obinna stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the murmuring voices. The crowd turned toward him, a sea of eyes filled with fear, confusion, and hope. He cleared his throat, feeling the weight of their expectations. "My friends, my family, my neighbors," he began, his voice steady. "Last night, we uncovered the truth about Oju. For generations, we believed that those who reached the age of 30 simply left to live in another land, that our prosperity and security came at no cost. But we have been deceived. Oju's wealth and success came from a dark pact, a curse placed upon us by Igwe the Wise generations ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd, faces paling as the truth began to settle in. Parents clutched their children tighter. Young men and women exchanged troubled looks, and the elders who had narrowly escaped exile stood in shocked silence. Obinna continued, gesturing toward the ruins of the council chambers. "The council used the Stone of Ages, an artifact that tied our city's fortunes to a ritual of sacrifice. The prosperity you see around you, the riches, the protection from disease, it was all a mirage created by that stone, sustained by the lives of those cast out when they reached 30. They didn't leave for another land. They were sent to the Valley of the Forgotten, where few survived." A wave of horror swept over the people, the full weight of the council's deception crashing down on them. Some cried out in anger, others in grief. A woman in the crowd fell to her knees, clutching her heart as tears streamed down her face. Her son had left the year before, and now she understood his true fate. Adaora stepped forward to join Obinna, her voice gentle but firm. "But we have destroyed the stone. The curse is broken. We will not send anyone else away. No more families will lose loved ones to this dark secret. We have freed ourselves from this bond, and now we are free to build Oju anew." The crowd's anguish slowly transformed into a tentative hope as people began to understand the significance of what Obinna and Adaora had done. They were no longer bound by the council's rules, by the pact made with the gods long ago. Oju was free, its people given a choice they had never been afforded before. An elder, Maman Kechi, stepped forward from the crowd. She was one of the oldest members of Oju, a woman who had barely escaped exile herself and had lost many loved ones to the mysterious rule. Her eyes, wise and weary, bore into Obinna's with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "You have given us a chance to live truly," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "We have been blind, all of us, but now we must decide what Oju will become. We must rebuild, and this time we will do it with honesty." The crowd nodded in agreement, murmuring words of assent. The people began discussing their future, sharing ideas for what a new Oju could look like without the burden of the pact. Young and old alike spoke of a city founded on community, equality, and shared responsibility, a place where every voice mattered. In the days that followed, Oju's transformation began. Without the council to impose its rule, the people established a new form of leadership, one built on open discussion and representation from all neighborhoods and backgrounds. They created a council of elders and youth alike, a body that valued transparency and invited all voices. Adaora and Obinna became known as the liberators of Oju, their names celebrated in song and story. They took active roles in guiding the rebuilding efforts, ensuring that Oju's new foundation would be grounded in integrity and respect for all ages. They marked the Valley of the Forgotten as sacred ground, honoring those lost to the council's cruel decisions, and each year the people held a remembrance ceremony for those who had been cast out in the name of Oju's prosperity. With the stone's magic gone, Oju faced challenges. The city's easy wealth was no longer guaranteed, and the people had to adapt to a more modest way of life. Yet, with this change came a deep resilience, a pride in building a city with their own hands, sustained by unity rather than sacrifice. The people farmed their land, traded with neighboring villages, and worked together to keep Oju strong. Obinna felt the weight of leadership in a way he hadn't before. Gone were the dreams of wealth and glory that once filled the city. In their place was a purpose grounded in truth and community. He walked through Oju's streets each day, talking with neighbors, hearing their concerns, and working to build the city they all envisioned. One day, as he and Adaora stood atop a hill overlooking the newly transformed Oju, she turned to him with a smile. "We did it, Obinna. We've given our people the power to live freely, and Oju is stronger for it." Obinna nodded, pride filling his chest as he looked out at the bustling city below. Children played in the streets, elders shared stories around a fire, and the air was filled with the sounds of a city alive with hope. the curse was gone, and in its place was a chance for a future built on the love and strength of its people. As the sun set over Oju, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold, Obinna knew that the true spirit of Oju had been restored. The town was no longer a mirage of wealth and power, but a genuine community, united by the bonds of family, friendship, and freedom. And that, he realized, was a far greater treasure than any magic stone could provide. Together, Obinna, Adaora, and the people of Oju had forged a new path, a legacy of courage, resilience, and honesty, one that would endure for generations to come.